Michelle, what's your vibe on time blocking?
My vibe is I've heard of it and I felt like maybe it's something I should be doing. You know, I feel like maybe it's something we felt like we all need to try, or like we're missing out on something if we're not doing it.
Yeah, I'm kind of with you actually. I had heard about it for a long time because a lot of the engineers at Google did it. And I was always like, I'm not a productivity person. Like, honestly, the word productivity gives me anxiety. Like, I hate it. I'm a really slow operator. So I'm that person where if you're standing next to someone standing over your shoulder and they're like by your computer and they're like, here, we'll just pull it up and do it now. Just like go to the folder and do the thing. And I'm like, don't watch me. I'm really slow. So like I'm not a productivity person, but I did notice this change that happened where I just did one thing, and that was I started spending more time in my calendar than I started spending in my inbox. And there was just a massive change to how I operated at work. And really it came down to I started time blocking. But I will say it took me a few goes and I still don't think I actually do it right. I don't even know if there is a right or wrong way. I guess that's what this episode is about a little bit.
Yeah, I'd love to know even just what is the definition of time blocking.
Yeah, exactly. So that's why we wanted to bring in an expert. What do other people think? Like you went out on social and asked people.
Yeah, I was curious about this because I would put myself in the camp of I've tried it and I couldn't commit to it. Like it seemed a bit too hard to me, or like I needed to spend a lot of time sitting down and planning things and do that over and over, which is just not something I can maintain. So I asked on my socials if you've tried time blocking and it's yes, I live by it, tried it, couldn't commit, never tried it, don't know what it is. And the winner here was 38% of people said tried it and couldn't commit.
Yes.
And then live by it was second with 26%, never tried it 21%, and 15% don't know what it is.
Okay.
So I think this episode will be useful.
Yeah. I am the person, the majority. So yeah, definitely tried it. Felt like it didn't work for me. I actually tried it several times before I was able to get it to stick. But I still was thinking that I'm not doing it right and there's something that I'm missing. So it's kind of why we wanted to do this episode and why we wanted to go out and speak to an expert. So I went out and spoke to Deb Ho, and she is an artist and a productivity expert, which I think kind of sounds like an oxymoron, right? Like how can you be both those things, creative and organized? But she breaks down exactly what time blocking is. And, the interesting part I thought about this interview, Michelle, that we're going to play in a second, she actually thinks about time blocking not just about how it helps you with work, but how it helps you with your whole life, which I thought was really interesting. So, and then we're going to come back at the end and I'm going to give my 5 really practical tips for how I was able to actually get it to stick for me.
Amazing. Can't wait.
So Deb, there's 2 camps of people when it comes to time blocking. The people who are like, I've heard of it, but I actually have no idea what it is. And then the second camp of people who have heard of it and think they're doing it, but maybe don't feel like they're doing it properly. And I feel like I'm in that second camp. So to just kind of clear up the first question, what is time blocking and why should we even be doing it?
Yeah, so time blocking is a really simple method where you just assign tasks to a time slot during the day. So, for example, instead of writing your basic to-do list, like reading, writing, doing the dishes, you actually assign those tasks to a specific time. So you would do like 9 a.m. is your reading time, and then 10 a.m. is your writing time, and washing the dishes is at 5 p.m. or something like that. So it really is just adding a time slot to those specific tasks.
And how do you actually decide what tasks you're doing when? Is there some kind of, is there a best practice we're meant to be following in terms of where we're putting tasks?
I think it really comes down to trial and error, to be honest. Unfortunately, a lot of people don't find time blocking that useful because they're just like, oh, a whole block of the day is just work and that's it. But generally, I find that it really comes down to what you do personally. For example, like I can't exercise at night, so I will always put it in the morning, and I don't read after like 9 a.m. I only read in the morning, so I always put it in the morning as well. So it really comes down to like what works with your personal lifestyle. Even if people say wake up at 4 a.m., like that's just not really viable for everyone. So it's something that really comes down to trial and error. You'll pull a few things that will be your dream life, but then you'll realize really quickly that life, your life gets in the way, and then you'll have to like kind of move things around and test it.
Okay, so because this is the kind of trap that I have been in before. I sort of wanted to try time blocking, and then I tried it, and then I was like, it doesn't actually work for me. Then I had this sort of moment where I stopped and thought about what are the tasks that I'm doing, and when is the best time of my day to do those tasks. So that was the big light bulb moment for me. For the listener at home who's sort of never done this before and maybe tried it and it didn't work, how do you actually get started in terms of deciding, what are the better times of day to do certain things? Is there any kind of tips that you have for that?
My main tip is to, number one, be very forgiving, because it'll be a process. And I think it really is based on your energy levels. So you would naturally do things that are harder at the beginning of the day. Like for me, like cleaning through my personal email is like very, very easy. So I tend to do it at night when I'm watching TV because I can kind of like splice it with like low energy activities. But if something takes a little bit more effort, I would push it earlier to the morning. I would also consider like your workday as well. Like some people can go to the gym at like 11 a.m., which is, I think, crazy because it's in the middle of a workday and you have like meetings and stuff. But like some people really can do like an early lunch and do their gym routine then and then go straight into like any kind of meeting afterwards. So I think it really depends on your own temperament and whether or not this is something that you can handle. The thing is always just start really, really easy and slot it in. Try it for like a couple of weeks and test it to see how viable it is in your life. And just keep adding things very slowly. I wouldn't rush into anything.
Okay, that sounds good. I remember the big aha for me was when I realized that my brain is different in the morning to the evening, and I can't actually concentrate on deep work in the afternoon. So where I used to put all my meetings in the morning and then I'd be kind of left to work in the afternoon, I completely flipped it and I started blocking out my mornings for actual work and time blocking all my meetings in the afternoon. And that kind of kept my brain engaged anyway because I was talking to someone. So that was a really big sort of lightning light bulb moment for me in terms of planning out those blocks. Um, let's just take a step back. So someone who's just getting started, they have an open calendar, or maybe they've got a few things that they're already in that calendar in terms of assigned work meetings and things like that. Can you actually break down the step-by-step process someone should go through to time block their week?
Yeah. So it is super easy. Generally, I would either go digital or paper. I personally like writing things down, so I would just do it. Just take a simple piece of paper, blank piece of paper, or you can use a diary or anything like that. What I would generally do is write major tasks that you want to get done during the day or the week as a list. So first start with a regular to-do list, which I think a lot of people have, and then kind of consider what your priorities are for the week. So generally I pick 3 maximum. I try to do 2 because I don't want to like overwhelm myself, but it's maximum 3. And then once you kind of consider that, either in your calendar or on the paper, you kind of write down, if you're doing the day, you write down time slots from top to bottom. So like when your day starts, which some people, they want to start from 9 a.m. So 9 a.m., 10 a.m., 11 a.m., 12 p.m., 1 p.m., all the way down to whenever you want to stop your day. And if it's a week thing, then you would just do Monday to Friday across the top.
Yeah.
And then do like morning, afternoon, night slots going down. So it's more like a table. And then at that point, you sort of have like almost like a grid of these time slots that you want to put tasks into. And then like you just consider how long things will take. So like washing the dishes would probably take half an hour. So you can give yourself a half an hour time slot at like 5 p.m. or like after you've eaten, so 8 p.m. And then you assign times like writing might take 2 hours. So you put that task at like 11 a.m. and then you just fill out the time and make sure you put breaks in between as well. Make sure you like slot in lunch and then have all the other like things you got to do during the day there as well.
Got it. So if you kind of step back and you look at your full day or your full week, should every slot of time actually be scheduled?
I would recommend not to. I would just guarantee like certain slots to be put in because I you need time to be kind of flexy, and then as you move through the week or move through the day, you'll realize that like things will change, like things will pop up. And if everything's like super rigid, you can't really move anything around. And I think that causes more stress than what the purpose of it is to like alleviate anxiety about tasks. So I would keep as much open as possible and also give yourself buffer time as well. Like if I were to do, I know for sure that washing the dishes actually takes 10 minutes for me. Like I don't have that many, or just put it in the dishwasher. But sometimes I just assign a whole half hour or hour to it because I'm like, if I finish it early, then I get rest time and then I can like do whatever I want. So it's pretty helpful to do that. And even if you give yourself buffer time, you actually realize when you time block that there's so much time when you're not like stressing about when to do things. If you just say you'll do it, there's actually so much time to do things.
I feel like it's been a very long time since I've heard someone say there's so much time to do things. I love that. Thank you. I already feel more calm talking to you. How about the traps people get into? So the people who think they've tried this and they're like, it didn't actually work for me. What are some of the things that people actually get wrong?
I think the main thing that people get wrong about time blocking is just getting too stressed about making everything perfect and creating this really rigid schedule. And I myself am such a big perfectionist and I want things to go exactly as I plan them, but obviously that never happens. And you kind of realize that with age, you're like, you can't control everything. So I think the biggest mistake really is that people don't do something and then they feel like they're a failure for not doing it. And I think that's totally not the case. I think it's a trial and error, as I said a bit earlier. And I think generally, uh, people do have to also assess whether or not the task that they want to do is important to them. Like for 2 years ago, I tried to put reading on my to do in my time block for the longest time, and I never did it. I'd always be like, I've got other things to do. It's not important. Or then I feel guilty about skipping it. But then I realized that I'm actually like reading was just not important for me at that time. And I just let go of that. And I was like, I'll go back to it when I have the time to do it. And now I read like almost every day because I want to do it personally. I think people try to force things that they want to do in the day when actually it goes against their values or it goes against their lifestyle. And that's more of a deeper thing than just like time blocking as a method. It really is like you have to look within yourself. That sounds so cheesy, but like there are things that people gravitate towards because they want to do it. And there's things that they procrastinate for years and years because they actually shouldn't be doing it. Like exercising is like a really good example. Like people say I need to go to the gym, but they never do. But for me, I don't go to the gym because I do swimming, I do tennis, I walk every day. And that's the easiest way for me to exercise. And it really is less about the time blocking and more about what you have the motivation to do in general outside of
Yeah.
time blocking.
That's a really important point. I think, the title of this episode is called "Why Time Blocking is Going to Change Your Freaking Life," but it's not actually going to work to get you to do something by just putting it in your calendar and having a reminder set up. So it's really about time blocking. Is a lot of it is about actually stopping and thinking and deciding what do I want to do in my day, allocating a realistic amount of time to do those things, and then trying to reduce some of the friction. So one thing I think is really important for people to think about when they're doing their time block planning is reducing the context switching time. So, do you want to talk about context switching, or do you want me to?
Oh, I can talk about it.
Please. Can you, for the person listening at home, and then this is around how do you actually order and group some of your tasks together to remove some friction? And Deb, can you tell us what context switching is?
Yep. So context switching really is just moving from a different task to another that is so significantly different. It takes your brain, like, I think I read somewhere, I'm not sure if it's accurate, but about 23 minutes of your time to really emotionally move from one task to the other. And for me, once I figured that out, or like once someone told me that, I just like that really blew my mind, because you kind of waste that time easing into the next task. So generally it's best to group similar tasks together. So you want to have all your meetings kind of in the morning or in the afternoon, so that way you have focus time in writing or like doing emails like all in one go. And generally like emails and admin is like one kind of group of like task, and then like writing or like creative work is like one type of task as well. So you want to group those all together so your energy levels are kind of similar for that type of task. And yeah, personally, I find it really important to smush everything together, to make sure that everything is kind of flowing with each other. And then I have a break and then I move on to a different type of task.
Yeah, 100%. So for the people listening, this is it, right? This is why, because you might think, oh, I can plan some stuff in a calendar. That's not really going to change my life. But the point is that because if you don't plan things, you're actually wasting so much time as you switch between different projects and contexts and tasks. And if you are able to do a little bit of forward planning, you can actually reduce that context switching time, and you can get a lot of time back in your day, and also just helps your brain work better. So a lot of people listening work in a sort of office corporate environment. And if you try to just group, say you're working on 3 different projects, I've seen a lot of leaders try to have specific days for different projects. And so your head's just really in this one project in that day. And then as much as possible, you can try and work on the other project and book the meetings around for that next day as well. I think one trap that a lot of us get into is that if you work in an office or any kind of workplace, your time's not necessarily your own. There's people putting meetings in, there's people pinging you on Slack, and they're like, can you do this thing? Do you have any tips for how people can protect their blocks of time that they've actually scheduled?
Yeah, I think it really is like setting probably a no meeting Friday, which we do at work, which is pretty good. And everyone really honors that. And we kind of make sure everything is like in by Thursday. I think setting a time during the week or even like an afternoon. A lot of my workmates, they put in a do not schedule like time period, which like really cannot budge unless it's like so important. And I think everyone really respects that. I think it's really like having conversations with the people around you, and also having like more like a understanding across the whole team that the afternoon or certain time of day is protected for just like quiet time. I think people don't love meetings, so the less meetings in general, everyone's a bit more happy about that. I think it's also just sticking to your boundaries, making sure that that time is protected, just saying that you can't do something, but also being flexible about moving that to like the time that they want or their task to another time, so everyone's happy. I like tend to always ask for things to be like noted kind of at least a decent amount of time like in advance, because I know I can get a lot of stuff done, and like if things have to be moved around, then like I can accommodate everything. I think it's being able to communicate your boundaries definitely with your workmates or like with your boss or anything like that.
I totally agree. It takes a little bit of time, but I think once you start to have a bit of a consistent schedule, people learn that as well. Couple of other tips for me. We also did no meeting Fridays at Google, and it was really good. It took a little bit of time for that culture to stick, but now it's very kind of clear, and people are pretty good at it. The other thing is just making sure you're putting in your start and end times in your calendar. So like at this time I'm commuting, I don't take calls or respond to messages. And then also including some of your boundaries in your signature as well. I know a lot of people will say, I only check emails twice a day, and and they'll even block those in their calendar that says, this is the time I'm checking emails and responding to Slack messages. These times do not disturb. So I think it's about having boundaries and try to be consistent, but then having a little bit of flexibility as well.
Yeah, because there'll be times when like things are like have to be moved around, and it'll be good like to have that flexibility. But in general, I think like across the whole team, it's generally very like much agreed that there are certain times that like cannot be touched, and like it having that freedom in general, like across the whole workplace, just makes people want to be flexible when the time requires it.
Yeah. Yeah. Deb, I'm interested in, for the person listening who's still like, I still need another push, I'm not totally sold. Can you tell me what your life was like before you started time blocking and then how you saw it change after?
So my time before time blocking was, I would say, like a bit more chaotic. I was really stressed because I'm constantly thinking of like everything at the same time. And I always wanted to do everything at the same time as well. Like I thought I could multitask, I could do things all the time, everywhere, anytime, any place. And I I kind of felt like very overwhelmed by the tasks. I also felt overwhelmed by the days ahead. I was always future planning and I was always thinking, well, if I'm doing this task right now, I'm not doing this other task. And then I'm losing out on opportunities because I'm not doing this task right now while I'm doing this other task. So it kind of makes you feel a bit of FOMO when you're like, don't have time blocking in place. You're like, I should be doing this, but then I'm doing this. There's
Task FOMO. I love
yeah,
it.
it gets really overwhelming, and you suffer a lot from decision paralysis.
Yeah.
It's kind of crazy how much time you actually waste just thinking about doing something instead of doing the thing. And that requires a bit of like training, I guess. Like I think the last few years, in fact, it actually takes that long. I've been kind of stepping away from wanting to like overthink and like thinking about doing the task instead of doing the task. Like sometimes with procrastination, your brain will convince yourself to like not, you know, clean out the fridge for 20 minutes, but it would take 20 minutes to clean out the fridge. So yeah, like that's something that I kind of really suffered from when before time blocking. But then when I discovered it, I actually read it in like a Harvard business magazine at the airport. And I was like, oh my God, it's so simple. It just says assign a time to something. And then it just like allows you to just look at your whole day and feel secure. It's like the security that helps me, where I'm like, I had 10 tasks that I didn't think I could get done in a day. But when you break it down and say, oh, it actually takes 10 minutes, I'm going to give a half an hour slot to that. Or it takes 20 minutes, I'm going to give an hour slot to it. You realize there's actually so much time in the day, where otherwise, if you just didn't really think about it, you'd be like, well, there's a vague 12 hours that I could be using. I've got 10 tasks. That seems so overwhelming. But once you add a time to it, you're like, oh, okay, I have an hour to wash the dishes. That's so easy. I think once I did that, I just realized it was really simple and it just gave me so much more security.
I will just say everyone's jobs are different, right? And we're not saying that time blocking is going to work for everyone. And a lot of people have the type of job where their day is just not their own. I think the thing that is important to think about is if you don't plan your day, other people's priorities will plan your day for you. So it's just about getting on the front foot with your time, which is so precious. So if you can just do a little bit of planning, you can get on the front foot. And it's actually, I've found, very anxiety reducing to know that you're kind of getting through things. I'll share some tips in a minute, but I've actually found the whole process, it feels like more work, but it actually can, if you stick with it, reduce your anxiety about time and work a lot.
Yeah. I think what I kind of like about this is I don't think I'm the kind of person that will ever actually time block, but I like what it stands for, and I think sprinkling a bit of the foundations of time blocking into how you do your job, if you're not the kind of person who's going to time block, is a good way to approach just being focused and intentioned about your day.
Totally. Because I think for a lot of us, the idea of time blocking every minute of your day just sounds awful. Like, when is the time for impromptu conversations and having fun, things like that? So yeah, I'm definitely with you on that.
I thought of one thing I loved when you guys were talking was like fitting things into your lifestyle, and I think you touched on like when is the best time of day to do certain tasks, and I think if you're maybe more in my camp, which might be the light touch time blocking camp. Two questions that I think could be good for people to ask themselves when working out, like when does your brain work best, is asking yourself, when do you procrastinate the hardest? Like when do tasks feel hard? And that really shouldn't be the time of day that you're trying to do deep work or really get into the weeds of certain things. And then when do things feel effortless? And that should really be a clue for your prime time. Like,
interesting.
I know I'm a morning person because things just feel easier for me. I know my brain completely bombs out at 3 p.m. Like, I'm done.
Yeah.
My day's done.
Same. Oh my God, same.
Yeah.
But some people, that's when they're picking up. My
Yeah.
boss at Google, that's exactly when his prime time was, kind of thing.
Yeah.
So that's a really big thing. Like, know when your deep work is best and make sure you're blocking that. So I have actually connected this idea of know what time of day is where you focus best. I've connected that to an idea that you shared in our productivity episode, which was episode number 2. And it's actually, I don't always know the exact task that I'm going to be doing, but I have a focus block as much as possible. I try to have focus blocks in the morning, and then I will sit there and ask myself, what's making me feel most uncomfortable today? And that will be the thing that I actually go and then do in that time.
Yeah, I love that.
Also, days of the week. If you are going into the office on Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, for example, and working from home Monday, Friday, you're going to be doing different things in the office versus at home. So you want to prioritize a lot more in-person time and meetings, and deep work is probably going to be more on the Monday and Friday.
Yeah.
The second thing that really changed it for me was this. Instead of, if someone asks you to do something, like someone says, hey, can you present in the team meeting next week? Instead of just adding it to a to-do list, I would instantly open up my calendar and say, I think that's going to take me like 3 45-minute blocks to do. And I would just instantly block the time up until that presentation next week. And then I would dump any kind of initial thoughts that I had into the first calendar block. And it just gave you this, like, it just reduced the anxiety for me, because then I know if I just stick to these blocks, I know I'm going to get it done. Once you feel the positive feelings of like, oh, hey, that actually works, it helps you stick with the time blocking.
You're selling it to me.
Love it. All right. And then these are 3 little really quick ones. You're going to hate this one, Michelle. You do need a block to plan your blocks. So like I do have a little block on a Friday where I actually try to plan out the blocks for the week ahead. Honestly, sometimes I skip it. I'm like, I'm having a margarita and I'm not doing that. But then I kind of, I do have to do it the next week. So I think just like if you are going to get this to work for you, it does help if you actually plan, have some planning time. My favorite one out of all of the tips is my task pebbles block. So this is just where I have 2 of them a week, and I just have a calendar block that says task pebbles. And as things come up throughout the week, those little things that you don't have time for, I just drop them into the description and save it. And then I just like, when I've got time, I'll jump in. Sometimes if I've got spare time in between meetings, I'll jump in and pull a task pebble, or other times I'll just make sure I'm smashing those out all in one go.
Such a good tip.
Yeah. And then the last point is just to trust the process a little bit. So it did take me quite a few goes. You'll start to get the good feelings of like, oh, it actually so helps sometimes to have an end point to something too. So like you can maybe work on something for 2 or 3 hours, but it's not actually healthy for your brain. So be like, I'm going to do 45 minutes on that task and then I'm going to stop. That sense of progress that you get from being like, okay, that is now complete and I can go and do something else, or I can have a break. It just makes you feel pretty good.
Okay, so how someone could start this tomorrow, they need to take a leaf from your book and plan and do that at a time when you feel most motivated. So for me, it would probably be a Monday morning.
Yeah.
And then I think it's best for people to start broad. Like maybe you have your deep work zone. Maybe you've got a shallow work zone, which is like your task pebbles. Yeah. Maybe you've got a personal zone, and that's just how you begin. And once you nail that, you can start to get more granular. Yeah. But use those 3 buckets to begin with as your to-do lists. Yeah, exactly. So jump into those calendar invites, pop down your notes. Stop putting your to-do list in the notes section of your phone or on a sticky note on your laptop.
Get it into your calendar.
And get it into your calendar.
You make it sound so easy.